What a day. It really has been fantastic talking to so many people. And we're going to end today's show with talking to my favorite person, at least my favorite European person. I have to admit, my wife and kids, I do like them a lot better, but they're not in Europe. You know who is? Scarlett is in Europe. Scarlett, how are you doing? How is Europe today?
With such an introduction, how can I not be good? Europe, on the other hand, that's a different story.
I laugh, but it is so sad. It is so sad. So many things happening. Where do we begin? My gosh, what's happening in France? What's happening in London? What's happening in Germany? Germany's falling apart. Let's stick with the first two. Let's go to France and England. What's the latest out of there?
Well, we have to start with Macron, who, by any luck, he's not in Europe. He is in your country. So we got rid of him only for a week,
Hmm.
unfortunately. But on a Monday, he gave a speech at the United Nations headquarters in New York, where he recognized the Palestinian state. Are we surprised? No, of course not. We could have seen this coming. He's been hoping for a two-state solution for a long time. This is completely in line with Keir Starmer and, of course, Ursula von der Leyen. Surprisingly, also the people who want to prolong the war in Ukraine. Now, some things I thought were very interesting. First and foremost, is that you see that Europe has very much a tendency to favor a two-state solution.
Hmm.
It's very likely that Belgium, Portugal, Denmark, Luxembourg, Malta, and Monaco are even going to follow this. And what I think is interesting is that besides the speech that Macron gave, Ursula von der Leyen, who is the president of the European Commission, I've said many times nobody elected her. She doesn't really have a mandate. Fun fact, she's facing now two votes of no confidence. The left and the right want her gone. Congratulations on that. Now says that we should have, and here it comes, a Palestine donor group. So, what does this mean? A Palestine donor group. It basically means that Europe, or at least the EU, will pay for the reparation of Gaza. It has to be economically viable, as she says it, quote unquote. Now, this, when I heard it, infuriated me. Because, first and foremost, it is again European taxpayers that have to pay for it, even though they never got asked if they want it or not. Obviously, we all know the answer to that. It's a rhetorical question. Of course, we don't. And the second thing, which is even more worrying, is that actually what you're doing now is saying to Hamas, well done, your violence worked. We'll pay for the damage that you have caused. And that's not only imposing a danger to Israel, it is also imposing a danger to us as the West. So we're in a complete road of self destruction. And you know what? This is one thing that really upsets me is that one thing that I always am impressed is that the European Union has this delusion that they can always endless spend money on things. We have to pay for the green madness. We have to pay for woke ideologies. Now we have to pay for Gaza. And I'm wondering who is paying for the people of Europe? For the people that are looking for social housing or need to go and see a doctor because there's never money for that. And even France saying that there should be a Palestinian state. Well, that's interesting. How are they going to pay for the reparation then? Because they're broke. Macron is 3 trillion in debt. His wife has to go to court to prove she's even a woman. He has other problems to fix. Maybe he should focus on that before he starts speaking about getting world peace done by having a two-state solution, which of course is not going to work. So that's that for a little bit in a nutshell.
Well, he started off with a bang. I don't know if you saw the video when Macron was here. He was trying his motorcade got stopped,
Oh yeah.
and he had to get out. And he's asking what's going on, and they're like, "Got a hold." President Trump's motorcade is coming through, and ended up having to walk. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, it is. It is quite ridiculous because you were right. The message that's being sent is, "Hey, if you want something, just go murder 1,200 people, kidnap
Yeah.
a couple hundred, hold them for 2 years, and then as long as you keep holding them and never give back all the hostages, you're going to get your own nation." And European leaders are going to back you on that. It's the dumbest thing ever, and by golly, I just can't see it happening. I really can't see it happening, despite what these leaders, and it's not just in Europe, across the world, are trying to do. It's insanity. But you're right when it comes to as far as the money being spent. They're talking about repairing there. Of course, they've also, a lot of people have been talking about fixing or rebuilding Ukraine when this war is finally over. It's a whole lot of money spent with very limited potential for return. At least, especially in Gaza, I'm not sure how you make your money back on that one, but I'm sure they have their ways. But what about energy? Because the energy infrastructure there is so bad. They're so reliant on outside forces. Couldn't that money be spent there? And I mean, that would be a good investment, right? I mean, it's something where, hey, if you got your energy going, then you can actually start making more money. You don't have to be spending money to import so much. Let's rebuild that instead of rebuilding Gaza, and let others rebuild Gaza. Maybe even some of the rich nations in the Middle East. What say you about that?
Well, I think what you're saying is a very valid point because at the end of the day, it's very strange that it's always either America, the United States of America, or us Europeans that have to foot the bill. And it's true. Why doesn't Saudi Arabia pay for it? Or the Emirates, right?
Hmm.
Why are we always the one that have to pay the bill? And I really want to say, as an European, to my fellow Europeans who are watching this, we should all collectively just stop paying taxes. And I mean that serious. I think it's what such a mild, non-violent way of protesting. Look, I in general would not have something against taxes when it's spent well. For example, you make sure that people that work hard, when they get sick, they can go and see a doctor. When they retire, there's good pensions. None of that is there. All of our money is being spent on actually the money laundering and all of the criminal activities of the European Union. And I am fed up with it. We shouldn't pay for it. This is why America was started. No taxation without representation. And I fully stand behind it. We should actually take that from the Americans and follow your example in that. And we see that it was actually very effective. A couple of weeks ago, this was actually happening in the UK. Remember, there was this place where they were householding migrants in luxury hotels. And then the people said, okay, then we're just not going to pay taxes because that money is not going to us, it's going to these illegal immigrants. Good for them. If imagine if we as a Europe, as a collective, say we're not going to pay taxes, what is the EU going to do then? They forgot that we are the ones that are holding the power. And I think it's time that we start remembering that.
Absolutely. What is there any? I mean, is there any push for this? Any? I don't know. See, I don't know the how the rallying works, like grassroots in Europe compared to here. Like if it were here, what you're describing is something that's like, okay, we form get a group together, form an organization, spread it out there, try to get people. That's how the Tea Party started. The Tea Party started with basically, the I don't know how many people know the history, but it basically started with a series of phone calls between like a dozen, maybe 2 dozen people, and then next thing you know, within less than a year, they were spread out across the country, and they were, in that case, they were really spawned from the from Obamacare, but that's not dissimilar from what you guys are doing. Could something like that? I mean, could you form a movement if you had, say a dozen, 2 dozen, however many people that were capable, very engaged? Could you in Europe do the same thing, or is there just too many challenges with free speech, with assembly, with well, a lot of crazy things? Could it even be done?
I like your question. Like this is something that I love about America and Americans in general is that they take so much ownership of their citizenship. So if someone is trying to infringe their First Amendment, they will fight for it. Now, Europe for a long time did not have this mentality, especially Northern European countries. And I want to congratulate the globalists for doing such a bad job that they have awakened the silent middle class, the people that have been ignored for decades. I think the perfect moment when we saw that was when Tony Robinson was holding his mass protest in London 1 or 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago. It had, what was it, 3 million people that came to the streets in
Mm.
support of Tony Robinson and his movement, saying we need to have freedom of speech, something that we don't have for a long time already in Europe, both in the EU and in the UK. People are fed up, and I've seen in every country that even in small villages where usually people would have had the tendency to be more obedient, we're done. We cannot be obedient anymore because if we are, then girls are getting raped and murdered. Or
Mhm.
we lose all of our freedoms, we lose all of our safety. The government doesn't really seem to care about it. So, yes, we are slowly building up a movement in Europe. The problem is, how do we make sure that it's united? Because you are the United States of America. We, as European, and I talk from an European perspective, so not necessarily the UK, but we are so different, and especially in the
Mhm.
national movements, they have a tendency, of course, as a national movement, to be focused on your own country, which makes sense. But in fighting the globalists and getting back our freedoms, we should really focus on saying, okay, how can we have a stronger alliance in that? So we can combine and share techniques, strategies, methods with all of those small individual movements. Because I do agree with what you say. At this point, if you want to make a difference, I think it's more effective even to do it on a grassroots level, right?
Mhm.
Fix the issues that you're seeing in your direct neighborhood. But you need to make sure that you can still share those ideas, those strategies, because we're not fighting it alone. You cannot win alone against the globalist. But yes,
Mm.
to answer your question, we are definitely waking up. Even those people that maybe for the longest time were silent and accepted it, those times are over. The globalists, they are in big trouble. They should fear us.
The insurance you need to protect your American dream. That's the tagline for my great friends over at America First Healthcare. You can find out more for yourself. You can reach them by going to patriot.tv/health, patriot.tv/health. Check them out, see what they offer, whether it's for health, for life, for business insurance. They do a fantastic job. That's just me saying it. I would strongly encourage you to reach out to them through that link, talk to them, and see what they can do for you. Because look, we can say, "Oh, great, that's it's awesome. They're America First Company, and blah 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 blah. They have their shared values and all that. That's great, right? It really is. But is it better? I mean, we're not going to be uh, getting worse coverage just because we can. They might give us worse coverage, but by golly, they promote America. That's that's just not going to happen. We are practical people. My audience here at Patriot TV. But with that said, they claim, and I would encourage you to research it, but they claim that they actually have better coverage than what you get through the government controlled healthcare systems or even many of the private healthcare offerings out there. And more importantly, perhaps for some of you, more importantly, they offer better rates. With according to their website, with thousands of insurance plans to choose from, it can feel overwhelming to find the right plan at the right price. At America First Healthcare, we take a holistic approach to make sure we find the best coverage for your exact needs. We get you better rates by helping you choose the right type and amount of coverage. Then we shop around for the best results. They can save you up to 20% on the coverage. Who couldn't use? I know we're most of us, the vast majority of us, are paying. I mean, compared to what we used to pay, my goodness, we're paying a lot. 20% right off the top, that would be a huge benefit. So reach out to my good friends over at America First Healthcare. Go to patriot.tv/health. Patriot.tv/health. President Trump mentioned the globalists yesterday when he was, or earlier when he did his speech at the United Nations, and he specifically called out certain Western nations that in Europe that were being invaded. He said that they were dying, and he was referring specifically to individual European nations. Obviously, you and I agree with that sentiment. But
Mm.
what are you hearing? Like what was the takeaway or feedback? Have you heard anybody who perhaps saw the speech, heard about the speech or anything like that, that are sitting there thinking, you know what, he's right, or hey, he's way out of line. There's been a lot of chatter over here. What are you hearing? Or what are you hearing over across the Atlantic?
First and foremost, let's start off with the obvious truth. Did President Trump ever lie? Of course he didn't. So everything he said in that speech is true. And just like with JD Vance and his incredible, incredible speech that he gave during the Munich conference, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's almost a shameful thing that we need to have an American to bring us common sense and to tell us the blatant truth which is in front of us. We have been creating our own destruction. And we are dying. Many of our nations are dying. Look at Germany. Look at the Netherlands. Look at Italy that's still being overflowed by illegal immigrants. We are dying, and the only people that are to blame for it is us. Now, how did people respond to it? I mean, it's always, of course, mainstream media is going to bash him and they're going to be in denial. And of course, Trump is this and that. But you know what? The mainstream media, they're already lost their power. Even here in Europe, X is growing. People are starting to see the truth. We have an increase of course also about of alternative medias. So we are in the middle of an awakening, and people are happy to finally have a president that is not playing political theater, that is not afraid to speak out on the truth. Just when he said that actually all of this climate things is a big scam. Wow, how nice is it that
Mm-hmm.
someone has the strength to talk the truth, who's not afraid, who doesn't play this political theater. President Trump is such a breath of fresh air, and we in Europe very, very much appreciate him for that.
You do have, um, you do have some good leaders there. I don't. Yeah, I would say in the same ballpark as President Trump, but then you also have some of the worst leaders that I could. I mean, to the point of I would say many of the leaders there are actively trying to destroy Europe. They are part of a conspiracy. But tell me about what's going to happen. Speaking of leaders and presidents, what's going to happen in Moldova?
Very good question.
Did you
Moldova,
notice the
first of all,
segue of leadership, and then let's go into that presidential election? Tell us
JD,
about it.
you did that so smooth, so smooth. No, first and foremost, I really wanted to talk about this. And it's of course because it's very personal to me. You know, I grew up in the Netherlands. I'm a patriot. I love the Netherlands. But Moldova is the country where my roots are from.
Mm.
And I can imagine that the people that are watching this are thinking, Scarlett, why are you talking about such a teeny tiny country I know nothing of? Like, why is it even relevant? Well, that is a very good question. It is relevant because Moldova is such a good example that shows us that even though small countries are being abused and are being like all of the tactics that we see from the globalists, how they are stealing elections, how they're making countries dependent, how they're robbing us from sovereignty. Moldova is a perfect example of that. Now, let me give you a bit more of idea of the country. For people who don't know it, it's a teeny tiny country next to Ukraine and next to Romania. So, because it's at the border with Ukraine, it has a very significant importance, especially now with the war. Uh, for the longest time, Moldova has never really been independent. First, it was part of the Ottoman Reich, then it was unified with Romania, then it was from the Russians, then the Russians took it again, it was part of the Soviet Union, and only in 1991 it became independent. Now, at that time, it was a financial disaster. You know, people fled the country because they simply couldn't make money. Now, how are you going to feed your family if there's no money?
Mm-hmm.
So now Europe comes and they say, we'll give you the solution. We'll bring you real democracy. Don't you worry, we know you've been under Russian influence. They're terrible, but under us, you will live in true freedom. Now, I will definitely not say that with the Russians you live in freedom, but I will definitely also not say that under the EU you will live in freedom. And the problem
Mm-hmm.
that Moldova is facing right now is that they're actually changing one dictatorship against another one. They're just changing the shackles. They were a slave to Russia, another slave to the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important? You have Maya Sandu. which is a Soros puppet. She studied at the Kennedy Harvard, the typical globalist leader university. She was installed by the European Union. And the way we could really tell this is by actually the last independent days on the 27th of August. Who came there? Of course, Macron, Merz, Navrosky, which I was a little bit surprised about. But it was such a good representation that Independence Day became Independence Day. Under Maya Sandu, over 300,000 people have left the country because the economy is being doing so bad. And I think people need to understand that now they're being lied to. The people of Moldova have been lied to because they don't understand what the European Union actually means. They're given billions. Those billions are being spent on roads or hospitals, which you might think is good, but it's actually making the country even more dependent on international conglomerations. At the same time, they don't really have a party or they don't really have a representative that is actually in their interest. What they need is to have a Trump, like the Moldavian version of a Trump, that's going to say, we're going to make Moldova great again. Because now you've got two camps, you're either pro Russia or pro EU. And it seems that they're very pro EU, which is not crazy if you think about the fact that 80% of their media is being sponsored by, well, formerly USAID, NATO, Soros, and the European Union. Of course, if you own the media, then it does seem very much that you're pro Europe.
Hmm.
So I'm very sad to see that a country that could thrive, that could be very independent because they have all of the facilities, has being is being taken over by the globalist.
How are the elections there? Rigged, not rigged?
Oh, of course they're gonna be rigged. I mean, just to give you an example, they had a last year they had a referendum to ask the people of Moldova whether they should enter the EU or not. Now, there were rumors that there was Russian interference, but what nobody talked about is the fact that Ursula von der Leyen, just a couple of days before this referendum, visited the country with one and then donated 1.7 billion euros to the country. That very much sounds like foreign interference, if you would ask me. And of course, given the fact that we had Independence Day supported by all of those EU leaders, of course it's going to be rigged. Oh, wait, I didn't even tell you that. So, when President Donald Trump was trying to run for office, they came with all of these allegations, and through the judicial system, they tried to ban him from elections. We've seen this
Hmm.
playbook also used, again, of course, against Marie Le Pen in France, against
Hmm.
Bolsonaro in Brazil, and this is what they're trying to do now as well in Moldova. So several parties have been banned. The judicial system has been actually given in the hands of Brussels because Brussels dictated that some of the judiciary had to be changed. These have become EU puppets, and now Maya Sandu, who is the president, have banned all of her opponents. So she has a free way to get re-elected, and people are being given a false sense that they are now democratic and they have a fair chance to choose their leader. And I really like if Moldova wants to be part of the European Union, that is not up to me, but it's also not up to Brussels to dictate. And I think Moldova should have a fair chance to have fair elections, but also to have parties that truly care about them, to have leaders that are thinking what is actually the interest of you as a Moldavian citizen and not of Soros or Brussels. And I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record because I keep repeating this over and over again. It's the same playbook.
We are a world of broken records right now. I mean, you look around and I find myself saying the same things. Even with Trump in office, there are still certain challenges that won't go away. Mostly external. I mean, it's not like he's missing it. It's that there's not much he can do, and a lot of it has to do with the globalists, and a lot of them are coming from Europe. And I do want to get a message out. If anybody wants to give me 1.7 billion, I will join the European Union. Just wanted to put that out there. So, and I'm not worth it, but I have one big question for you. But before I get to it, I don't want to, just in case it's a long answer, which it can be. I encourage that. But just in case we run long, let's start with tell us about you. Tell us how to get where you are on X, where you are on anywhere, how we can find you, and how the audience can follow your amazing work.
Well, JD, first and foremost, I really want to take another moment to thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to let America know that there are still sane people in Europe. Because I can imagine that when you see the headliners, you're thinking we're going insane. But we are definitely waking up. There's a strong mega movement. And if you want to follow the work that I do, because I really talk a lot about it, I try to translate that how decisions being made in Brussels, how are they affecting us, and what are the latest developments. It's easiest to do that on X at Scarleva.
Spell it.
Scarlovea.
There we go. Yeah, because I some people are gonna miss it. We don't want that to happen. Excellent. So,
Exactly.
my question for you: we're coming into politics here. There is seasonal stuff, right? We get that,
Mm.
but in Europe, what I've noticed is that the seasons play a much bigger role socially. Within the society itself, with travel, basically once you get to winter, well, fall and then winter, a lot of things are changing, and people just act differently. There's their day to day activities change, everything in Europe, and so I want you to give us basically a fall preview. Now that we're here, give us a fall preview of what you expect for, let's say, the next 3 months. What are some things that you think might happen? Some things that you hope to happen? Some things that you hope don't happen? Basically, and take as much time as you need. Just walk us through, and it doesn't have to be like, oh well, next month this. Just tell us what are you looking forward to as you pull out the Scarlet's crystal ball. What does Europe look like over the next 3 or 4 months?
I like your question, JD. We have to start with the obvious is that before the end of the year, Ursula von der Leyen will be gone. There's two motions of no confidence against her. There's no way she's going to survive that. The left want her gone, the right want her gone. And frankly, I think even the European Commission want her gone. Because if she doesn't survive that motion of no confidence, that means that the entire committee will be dissolved. That means that all those people that are making 20, 30K for doing nothing will lose their job. They will not do that. They will rather sacrifice her. So this is something I am looking forward to. And I think with good confidence, I think that will happen. As a duchy, we in the Netherlands have elections coming up at the end of October. Now, that is something that I'm very worried about. We have someone that's doing really well in the polls, which is Frans Timmermans. And Frans Timmermans, he really literally called himself the climate pope. This is the man responsible for the Green Deal. So, in case he will become our prime minister, I mean, the housing crisis will be solved in the Netherlands because people will just leave willingly. That will be the end of it. That will be the final nail in the coffin. Now, what I'm very curious about are two countries in particular, which will be France, because Macron's government collapsed
Yeah.
again. So I'm really worried. Let's face the fact, at this moment he's having more fun hugging with criminals. I mean, he was getting very cozy with Ahmed Al-Shara at the United
Hmm.
Nations, and he's been before when he was visiting France. This is a man who doesn't condone the genocide on Druze in his own country, while he's being welcomed by open arms by Macron. And because of so many reasons, more than 70% of the French want Macron gone. So I will be very curious if he's going to make it, if he's going to make the end of the year, because there will be new elections. He will be still president, but his party is already not doing really well, so they will lose all power within parliament. That's going to be a very interesting development. And then, of course, we have Keir Starmer,
Hmm.
who, I mean, the reason why he won the elections is not people because they wanted to have him as a prime minister. It's because 20 million people didn't vote. And it was more of a protest vote against the conservatives than actually it was a vote in favor of Labour. So, given the fact that there's a lot of turmoil in the United Kingdom, we saw how 3 million people gathered in London. This
Hmm.
was the biggest conservative protest we have ever seen in the UK. I really wonder if he will make it. I really if he will if he will be still in office by the end of 2025. Now, maybe it's wishful thinking, because I personally think that Europe will be better off without Macron, without Ursula von der Leyen, and without um, Keir Starmer. But we'll have to see. Only time will tell. It's at the end of the day, it's up to God. But I hope will God have mercy on us.
On us all, we are in strange, and I would argue, very potentially endish times that we're in right now. And I look at Europe and I think, wow, that's a precursor for the United States. We are already seeing United States, culturally speaking, appears very similar to places like Great Britain, places like France, about 8 or 9 years ago. So we're starting to see the seeds planted, and it is
Well,
what it
I
is.
want
I
to say
don't. I
something.
Yeah. Please say something positive if you can,
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
want to
already
say
getting
something
depressed.
positive. No, I'm not
Please.
gonna make it depressed because the good thing is that when they're gone, it means that we're winning in France. Marie Le Pen, who's leading a conservative party, a patriotic party, she's the biggest in the polls. Then
Nice.
10 years ago, nobody could have believed that that would happen. The same is going now with Reform UK. They're doing incredible. Nigel
Hmm.
Farage is winning in the polls at the moment. So, yes, it's a lot of negative, but when we get rid of the negative, we're going to have so much positivity, right? After
Right.
rain, there's always sunshine. And we are now in the middle of the storm. And you know what? Just as with bisons, you don't have to run away from the storm, you have to go towards them. And that's exactly what we're doing.
I love it. See, I'm feeling better about it already. We do have a chance of making it, don't we?
We do. We
We
definitely
really
do.
do. Well, God bless you, Scarlett. You as always have been a breath of fresh air on this show. I'll see you next week. Yes,
I'm looking forward to it. I know I was gone for 2 weeks, and every time I
I
was thinking,
know.
oh, I missed the show. I missed the
Yeah.
people, and I've missed being on the show.
Well, we're welcome back, and stay safe out there. It's dangerous. You know better than we do, but it is dangerous over there. So just keep your guard up. Be ready.
I
Till
will
next
do.
week.
Thank you
See
so
you then.
much. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you. God bless you as well, and God bless Europe. You guys need all the blessings you can get.
Yeah, we
Take
do.
care.